Phil, thank you for joining me for this episode of Under the Hood, and thank you for anyone who is tuning in and here with us today. So we're going to talk to Phil about what his job is, how long he's been with us, and then we're going to, I'm keen to talk to Phil about some questions around culture and values and what it's really like, the whole idea of being under the hood. So Phil, over to you. Tell us about you, your job, your life at the Lumery so far.
Yeah, so I work at the Lumery as a senior advisor, and I've been at the Lumery for a bit over a year now. I think it'll be a year and 2 months next week. And my job is effectively helping companies to build capability around marketing technology. So a lot of what we'll be doing is going in and probably talking to people within the marketing department, maybe sales, technology departments as well, trying to get an overview of the landscape of where companies are at with their marketing technology and the outcomes they're able to deliver to customers. And then giving them help on, all right, here's a roadmap of how you can get to where you want to go. So we might talk through on a particular theme. It might be around the maturity of your, let's say, your marketing automation or your personalization or whatever it might be. And we'll talk through and see where that's at by talking to a bunch of people around the company. And from there, come up with a game plan to increase that. So like everyone else at the Lumery, our goal isn't to just do the work and then ride off into the sunset. We want to build that capability internally. So we focus as much on the people and process side of it as you do on the data and technology. So a typical day for me is probably talking to people within a business about what they do, how they do it, and coming up with plans how to take them to that next level.
I think your job's really interesting, Phil, because I see so many crossovers with my job in that both you and I are really focused on how people learn and how they make change and how they adapt to new things. And so I remember we talked about a project of yours last year now, and it was like a real qualitative piece around better understanding how people use the stuff that they've got. So I think your job's really interesting because I am sure you can have the best technology tools in the world, but if you haven't really thought about how they're going to be implemented, you're kind of dead in the water.
100%. And particularly, I think in Australia, where we do a bit of skills shortage, you've had COVID closing borders for 2 years, that sort of thing. You can't just say, oh, I want to go get, for example, a TLM specialist or a Braze specialist or something. It's definitely difficult to find those people. And for that reason, it's better if you can to train up people internally, but you don't know what you don't know, and it's hard to know where to start with that sort of thing.
What do you love about your job, Phil?
I love talking to people. I'm very extroverted. So I like that I get to meet a whole lot of people. I think on the client side, you're not in with one client for a full year where you'll never see anybody else and you only deal with 1 or 2 stakeholders. My work is very much sort of project based. And while there might be some continuity with clients, I'm often working on 2 or 3 things at the same time, which I do enjoy because it gives you a broad range of exposure. And certainly the brands that we have at the Lumery is basically the top echelon of Australian companies and has given me great exposure to a whole lot of different setups and best practice everywhere. I think the bigger thing though, even is just the access to internal experts and how smart everyone is here. So you have that classic, when you start a new job, you never want to feel like the smartest person in the room, and obviously you want to be able to add something, but you don't want to and be like, wow, this place has not got anything sorted out. Where do I start? And it's not like that at all. So many people, pretty much everyone you talk to is an expert in a particular field or a range of fields. And it's given me great ability to sort of sponge off them and try and learn as much as possible. Because in my role, I do need to know a little about a lot effectively. Yeah. I need to have that broad understanding of how things sit in the marketing technology stack, how we might bring processes to life and so on. And we call in the experts once we're at the implementation phase. So I just love being able to talk with a whole lot of people who are really smart about these sort of very, very targeted subjects and sponging up all that knowledge.
What I think it's really interesting you're talking, Phil, about experts and excellence that we have here, and super smart people and really talented people and really curious and engaged people. What do you think? I'm always interested in how people go in those environments when we're talking about things like imposter phenomenon and feeling like you don't know enough and not feeling good enough. What is it like here, being in a high-performing organisation, working with amazing clients, super smart people? How do you feel? How did you feel in the first little while? How do people feel in this kind of environment?
Yeah, I think that's a really important topic because I know that we all struggle with that sometimes, particularly when starting new jobs and going into new roles. And I think the biggest part of that is really having the support around you, because you need to have certain information and you need to go, particularly in my role, to a certain level of depth. But I'm not expected to know the exact intricacies of how Braze will connect to Telium at a field level or the transformations in between. Like, we have an implementation team and a tech team for that. So I think you have to some extent, let go the idea that you're going to know everything. And that was a good learning and a continual learning for me, because coming from my past role, I'd been at the same company for 6 to 7 years. We had one tech stack, we used 5, 6, 7 tools, whatever it was, and I knew them pretty much inside out. So I could go to any meeting and say, these are the fields that connect these things. That's exactly what happens. But you can't do that when you're working across many clients, many stacks, and you're not meant to. It's impossible. You drive yourself crazy if you wanted to get absolute expert status and get every certification in every tool.
Yeah.
A lot of getting over that imposter syndrome is just realizing that, I'm not meant to know everything here. Here's what I need to know to add value for the clients and internally, and sort of start from there. But it's something that honestly I have spoken with a lot of people at the Lumery about, because I think we all share that concern sometimes, but at the end of the day, you've been hired for a reason, and very few people here are sitting there going, I know nothing about anything. It's more like, yeah, I know this really well, but you don't value your own skill set well enough from the inside, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and I reckon that's something that is a real standout here. It's like we actually articulate that. We don't expect you to know everything. We do expect you to have a real interest and, I guess, self-dedication to learning, because you're going to need it, but we're not expecting you to come in with everything. So tell me a bit about that from your perspective, Phil, about how we do stuff around being curious and learning and kind of growing. I know that's a really vague question, but what comes to mind when we talk about like learning and the Lumery?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of things we do which make that, something that is heavily encouraged. I know that within the advisory team, which is my team, we basically maintain a Confluence page, sort of like a knowledge base of, here's the tools, here's what they do, here's where they sit in market, here's some clients that use them. And that's a resource that anyone can go in and read up on if they've got a bit of extra time to say, this is even me just last week, I don't know Google Marketing Platform well enough. And then I've gone and done a bit of a deep dive on that, read up about it, created a page so that others can actually get that knowledge as well if they're interested, or if a client needs that knowledge. So that's one way we do it. I think we do a pretty good job of documenting things and that knowledge sharing. We're also talking about things like training paths and ongoing sort of learning. So that might look like within a particular tool, particularly some of sort of the partners that we see cropping up quite often, the Brazes and the Teliums and so on, to have, well, here's what entry-level knowledge looks like, here's what sort of intermediate working level is, and here's expert status. And our tech team that is in the implementation, they'll need to be expert. They need those certifications. They need to have that credibility. But for someone like myself, I can't be certified in everything. I might probably just need that working level knowledge. And if you're in our marketing team, you might just need the basic understanding of here's where it sits in market. You read a 1-hour article or a 10-minute YouTube video, and that's where you go to. So mechanisms to get that continual learning going. And I think very much in our culture, it's that sort of group of people who want to continue to learn, because the industry is so fast moving. Like, what we're talking about this even yesterday in the context of building a 3-year plan or a 2-year plan or a 5-year plan. And I sort of personally feel that a 5-year plan is not really that useful in our business, because things move so quickly. 3-year plan, great, but 5 years, it's very difficult to say where the market's going to sit and what you're going to need in 5 years' time. I mean, look at COVID.
True. So true, which is really interesting in the context of the Lumery turning 5 years old this year, because it's like that seems like this lifetime that the Lumery's been around, but it's 5 years and so much has happened, and so much growth and development has happened and is still happening. If you were to describe the Lumery as a movie, what would it be?
Ooh, interesting question. Oh, I think I'd go for something like Ocean's 11, because you've sort of gathered this range of people from different backgrounds and different skill sets, and they're performing it as this team and a highly intricate tasks. So take aside the crime element and the fact that all the actors are much better looking than I am, but otherwise I think that sort of holds, like, and that's often how we'll work. We'll say, we need a squad, we need to assemble a team to go and perform this task or to investigate this thing with a client. Let's get the 3, 4, 10 people, gather them together. Here's everyone's role. Ideally, everyone works perfectly together and we work it out. And then we accomplish the task and client's happy.
That's awesome. I love it.
Sequels, hopefully, if we've done a good job, the sequels.
I was going to say Ocean's 11 is like is that the George Clooney? Is it the George Clooney one?
Yeah.
Isn't there one that's got like lots of women in it? What's that one? Ocean.
That's like 13 or 14 or something. You're right. There was one which was purely female cast. So we do hire men as well. We do have a lot of women, but we do hire men as well. So don't be put off.
Absolutely. I was thinking about that actually just yesterday. We've been looking since International Women's Day. We've been doing a bit of a deep dive into our gender diversity and stuff. And we've got we're nearly even now, even spread of males and females, which is cool. So another question I have for you, because my background is consulting as well, and I think there's a really large range of consultancies you can work for depending on your style, what you want from kind of work and the rest of your life. How would you describe, either for people that might have worked at other consultancies before, or maybe people that have never worked at a consultancy, what would be your insights on how the Lumery does it and how it might be different, and what might some people be worried about or excited about, they might find unexpected with us? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can't speak to this from a personal experience because this is the first consultancy I've worked at, but I do have some friends who have worked at, typical sort of big 4 consultancies. And I think there's a couple of things there. One is that you still have an ability to shape processes and roles and that sort of thing, because we are a growing company. We don't have this monolithic sort of series of processes behind. And I know that clients have told us that they appreciate that as well. When we're responding to a brief, we'll say, we'll do this and we can do this other piece and customize it a bit. I think often when you're working with some of those big 4 consultancies, because they're a bit of a marketing machine in that way, they say, here's how we do it, and it's 12 weeks and this is exactly what it is. And that might be good for some, but there's not much flexibility. There's not a whole lot of like catering to the specific needs of the client. So yes, we do have a statement of work and we have, here's how we're going to actually do that thing. But at the end of the day, there's a bit of room for flex in that. I think the other one is there's a less of a focus, like in a good way, on getting to a particular billable hours number, and it's not very rigid in terms of, if you want to go and learn something and say it's worthwhile for me to invest in this because having a client does that, there's more of an ease of doing that than I think there would be at those other consultancies, because we'd say that yes, learning is as important really as doing the work itself, because at the end of the day, and I know this is a big concern for the founders when we started, it's like, well, should we do implementations or just consultations? Or it's like, well, you don't have credibility as a consultant if you haven't implemented the product and you know what's happening on the ground, you know where the bodies are, as they sometimes say. So I think that we've got that close connection between the tech teams, and advisory consulting teams like myself, so that we've got that first-hand experience and there's more flexibility at how we approach problems.
How do you feel at work, Phil? Like, are you energized? Are you busy? Are you tired half the day? How do you feel like in a day of work at the Lumery?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. Obviously, the last couple of years has been a lot of time at home, which isn't my preferred option, just because lockdowns. I'm quite an extroverted person, but I get energy from the sort of informal catch-ups that we have, and we have a few mechanisms for that, like coffee chats, that sort of thing. So I feel quite energized when I'm working with people and talking with people, and it's obviously better in person, but online remote is still good. So I think particularly particularly in consulting, you go through phases of emotions in terms of like, firstly, I don't know anything about this client or this industry, I have to learn it all. Then you have the first meeting, you're like, oh no, I know a bit about this, I can add some value. And then you get a little, all right, okay, I know I can do it. And you get more and more sort of comfortable with your work and working it out. So yeah, I'm quite happy at the moment. I think I'm lucky in that I'm working on a couple of clients that I have like really strong background and experience in, not just what I did, but what my wife used to do. So I can quite confidently talk to all aspects of that business, and I feel good about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you getting back to more face-to-face stuff now with clients and things opening up a bit more?
Yeah, definitely. My main client at the moment prefers face-to-face if possible, and they're in the city, so it's quite doable, and I prefer that as well. I think we're going to see a bit more of that, particularly, if we're based in Melbourne, or most of our staff are based in Melbourne, and it's a Melbourne client, it helps to build those relationships on both sides. There's definitely going to be a place for remote. So you might have something like a kickoff might be in person, and you might conduct 5, 10, 15 interviews, mostly remote. But then if you've got a larger, let's say, showcase of your work or presentation, that's probably going to be in person, because it's something that you get more value out of having that group around for. So I think, like every company, we're working it out. We don't have a hard and fast rule right now of being in person. And I think it's sort of, let's see how people feel and how they want to go. But as time goes by, hopefully we're giving enough reasons and I guess incentive for people to come to the office and have those meetings in person.
Yeah, and then you get to do cool things like go and have lunch with me and Kate when she comes down from Brisbane.
Absolutely.
Actually hang out, which is awesome. Okay, last question, Phil. What is your, and I didn't even give you advance notice of this, so how would you describe our culture in about 5 words?
About 5. Okay, there's some flex there. That's good. So I would say definitely growth, both personal and on a business side. Like, we're a growing company and we really want personal growth. Learning is a key part of the business, and that's something we definitely focus on as well. I think flexibility would be another one as well. There's a very open culture of, hey, if we're doing this process in a particular way and you think we could do it better, let's suggest it, let's talk it through. That's definitely something that's encouraged to suggest things. And I'd probably say expert. I'm going to go for 4. I'm going to say expert for 4, because I think that pretty much everyone here has a really strong expertise in at least one thing. And it's really great to sort of work where you have such a respect for your colleagues and you can learn so much of them.
Love it. That was approximately 4 words. We'll take.
Yeah, approximately.
We'll accept that, Phil. Awesome. Thank you. Great conversation. I feel like I've got a million other questions I would be happy to ask you. And for those tuning in, hopefully this has been another nice little snippet just into seeing a real life Loom and kind of how we operate and how we carry ourselves, how we kind of just go about our day, and the kind of stuff that jumps out for Phil in terms of what is special about the Lumery. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Mel.
Thanks, Phil.